Hey everybody, tonight's video is called Judgment Against the Philistines. And tonight we continue our pass-through study here in the book of Jeremiah as we're approaching the end of our long study here. Looking at the word tonight, a prophecy against the Philistines. And we just kicked it off on Tuesday, a new section of the book of Jeremiah here, looking at the judgments announced against the nations. And tonight the batter up is the Philistines. And tonight's video is going to be pretty short. It's only 7 verses here that we're going to go through. So it's going to be a fairly short video. If you still got some Christmas wrapping to do or Christmas shopping, whatever, maybe some festivities that you do right before Christmas. We're only a few days away from Christmas as well. So in Jeremiah chapter 47, we're going to look at verses 1 through 5 to open up a big chunk of the chapter. Says, the word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah the prophet against the Philistines before Pharaoh attacked Gaza. Thus says the Lord, behold, waters rise out of the north, and shall be an overflowing flood. They shall overflow the land and all that is in it, the city and those who dwell within. Then the men shall cry, and all the inhabitants of the land shall wail, at the noise of the stampering hooves of his strong horses, at the rushing of his chariots, at the rumbling of his wheels. The fathers will not look back for their children, lacking courage, because of the day that comes to plunder all the Philistines, to cut off from Tyre and Sidon every helper who remains. For the Lord shall plunder the Philistines, the remnant of the country of Caphtor. Baldness has come upon Gaza. Ashkelon is cut off, with the remnant of their valley. How long will you cut yourself? And Jeremiah here, although Egypt's Pharaoh Hophra conquered the Philistines who lived in the coastal plain of Palestine in the Gaza, Phoenicia in 587 BC, Babylon appears to be the conqueror in the scene out of the north at the same time of the invasion of Judah between 588 to 586 BC. And the Egyptians, they attacked Israel's old enemy, including before the Battle of Megiddo in 609 BC, and also again in 601 BC. And in verse 4, Tyre and Sidon, they were Phoenician cities further down the Mediterranean coast. And it's unknown if an alliance existed between the Philistines and the Phoenicians. And Caphtor is the Philistines' place of origin, better known as Crete. And in verse 5, we see baldness and cutting taking place. And we're not talking about some teenagers being emo or whatever the case is. Baldness and cutting, they were ritual mourning practices that took place for pagans, include cutting themselves and shaving their heads. And Jeremiah, he's describing the tragedy of the coming Babylonian invasion. And it would bring such a crisis and fear that natural affection and courage would be forgotten. And King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon would conquer all the cities as he would act as an agent of the Lord. And to finish the chapter, like I said, nice and short tonight. O you sword of the Lord, how long until you are quiet? Put yourself up in your scabbard. Rest and be still. How can it be quiet, seeing the Lord has given it a charge against Ashkelon and against the seashore? There he has appointed it. So we see the sword of the Lord, and the sword of the Lord is used in the Bible many times. And it's the instrument of the Lord's judgment unsheathed against his own people in Ezekiel 21, verse 9 through 17. And now it's going to come upon their neighbors, the Gentiles. So to wrap up tonight's video, as we can see, it's just a historical focused chapter. It's not really a devotional type chapter. We're looking at the introduction of the prophecy against the Philistines. And in verse 2 and 3, we see that the judgment comes from the north, aka Babylon. In verse 4 and 5, we see the sword of the Lord come against the afflicted cities of the Philistines. In the chapter, it ends with speaking to and hearing from the sword of God's judgment. And that's going to wrap up tonight's video. Like, I'm not even kidding. It's only over 5 minutes tonight. And we'll see you next, as we'll be looking at the word of judgment against Moab. And that one tomorrow is the plan for that one, Lord willing. That one's not going to be 5 minutes, so it's going to actually be longer. So tonight's a good night to get caught up on you wrapping up or whatever you got to do with your festivities. So I hope you have a great weekend up ahead, and I hope to catch you tomorrow. God bless.